Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Christian Whistleblower Channel. I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, your host, as always, with Jay Campbell, one of the foremost testosterone and hormone optimization specialists in the world and a growing voice in the esoteric community as well. And, ladies and gentlemen, we're very happy to welcome in tonight a man that says there's far more to this world than is taught in our schools, shown in the media, or proclaimed by the church and state. Most of mankind lives in a hypnotic trance, taking to be reality what is instead a twisted simulacrum of reality, a collective dream in which values are inverted, lies taken as truth, and tyranny accepted as security. They enjoy their ignorance and cling tightly to the misery that gives them identity. The author of Fringe Knowledge for Beginners and the chief poobah of Montalk.net joining us tonight is Tom Montalk. Tom, welcome to The Last Stand. It's our pleasure and honor to have you with us.
Hey, how's it going? Really glad to be here.
Very excited. I've been looking through your website. I've been looking through the talking points that you and Jay have put together. I think we're in for a wild ride. And if you're in the chat room, feel free to ask questions. If we notice them, we'll ask them. But I think we got a lot of things to talk about and some deep rabbit holes to go down. Jay, how you doing?
I'm awesome, man. Just quick note. I think we need to mention this, and I know Tom supports us. And let me just say, first off, to everybody watching the show, this is, as Jeff said, a real treat. Tom is literally one of the most knowledgeable people in the esoteric community that I have literally. I mean, most people know our show, Jeff, know that I'm very, very deeply read, and I consider myself like a real scholar in this realm. And this guy right here, who looks like he's 16, but he's not.
He had to say it, didn't he?
He's not 16, but he looks like he's 16. It's because he's got angels, I think, around him at all times, keeping him young. But no, realistically, this guy's knowledge is second to none. Honestly, I think it's a perfect segue, Jeff, because this is the real David Wilcock, okay?
That's a great point.
Let's just be real honest, because Jeff and I just came back from Contact in the Desert, and without disparaging the fine people that run the CIA, whatever that was, Jeff.
Here we go, Tom.
Not what you and I expected it to be. And even I say that, you and I know that we expected it to be what we thought it to be, but it was worse. Talk about that.
Yeah, that is the second fiasco in the desert that I've been a part of. And this one, I don't know which one was the bigger fiasco, but I was disappointed essentially because I was expecting to go to an event of deep esoteric knowledge, an event of like-minded people seeking more than anything ascension and enlightenment and to build and develop their spirituality. And what we walked into basically was 1990s Pentecostal charismania
yes.
carnival of entertainment and personality. And it was very, very disappointing to me at the core. And as I walked around there, and I'm not a spiritual giant, but as I walked around there, I didn't feel much high consciousness at all. And it was a real disappointment of people there very hungry, very seeking, and nothing there. It was like a baby in a candy store. A lot of good stuff to eat, but nothing that's going to give them any nutrition. And they would have died before they would ever found anything real to eat. So it was very disappointing to me. And hopefully, I know there has been a lot of blowback, not just from us, a lot of blowback across the Twitter sphere and across all of social media. So maybe Gaia and the people that put on Contact will get the message and step up their game next year. We can only hope.
Well, and this is all about Tom, but I just wanted to make sure that we got this out here. I told you, Jeff, you know this, I wasn't going to spare any punches. And you're right. There's been a lot of stuff echoing across the social media sphere. But, our good friend who we will eventually have on the show, who we kind of already did a makeshift podcast in Denver, Mr. Schwartz that owns Purple Power, he flat out said that, that Gaia is run by the CIA, and now the CIA is infiltrated, the quote unquote consciousness community.
Before we dive into Tom's information, let me just ask you, Jay, Jordan, is his name Jordan Sather?
Yeah, Jordan Sather. Yeah.
Jordan came out and said that they, blocked his CD and they're blocking his information. Now, my question is Jordan designated opposition or is he true opposition?
I think he's just designated opposition. I think a lot of these people truly do intend to inform people and help people, grow consciously. But at the end of the day, the dark forces control the money magic system, and everybody's got to pay their bills, bro. And so it's like, if you're not in a way able to pay your bills without like also, bowing down to the master. I mean, I've asked Jordan to come on our show many times, Jeff. You know that. Jordan's in the Decoders of Truth. Jordan has responded to me many times via email. He's, we've talked on Twitter. There's an open invitation, Jordan. If you watch this, it gets back to you. You can come on our show. I don't know what's going on. Obviously, I'm glad that you are aware of what's happening in the community, because you're obviously being negatively affected too. But dude, that whole thing, back to what you were just saying, and then we get to Tom, is there was a lot of spiritual vampires there. There were people there, as Ransom and Rex said, who were literally looking for answers that no one there was able to give them. And it was depressing. And I talked to obviously Cynthia via text, and you've been really tired this week. This week during the middle of the week, I was tired. We got our souls or our energy or our higher selves or whatever, beat up being there, dude. There were a lot of people in there with dark energy, lost, as you said, seeking answers that were never going to come. And as you said, and let's be really honest, this show, we make it a point. This is about being physically healthy. And one of Tom's points tonight is talking about the physical vessel and traveling in this matrix soup, whatever this is. And those people at that place, Jeff, were not taking care of themselves. You and I saw people that were smoking 50 packs of cigarettes probably a week, who were, morbidly obese, could not even walk. I mean, it was horrifying to see what was at that desert, show. And I just feel bad because our message is so big about, spiritual fitness comes from being physically fit and vice versa. And I didn't see any of that there. So, it's just.
Yeah, I think we expected to see a more advanced section of humanity, and we didn't. And that was the cause of, I think, of our chagrin. So as we move into the great information that Tom has, what's first on our agenda? Jay Campbell of TOTRevolution.com.
So let me just ask Tom a question first, because it's perfect. So we have a lot of amazing points tonight, which we'll get into. But Tom, let me just ask you, do you think, because this is what I said to Jeff at dinner, and by the way, we did meet Robert Stanley, and that was
great.
Amazing occurrence to spend time with him. We obviously also spent time with Rex and Ransom, and they were awesome. And Rex was, his normal, typical fired up self, and Ransom's a cool dude. But Tom, do you think that a lot of the people that are attracted to these things are not, quote unquote, like the fine people that watch The Last Stand, like the people that follow you, like the people that follow Jeff and I, and that they're just like baby seekers, baby boomers who watched an ancient episode or Ancient Aliens episode? They're like, oh, I'm woke. I mean, what is your input on that?
Yeah. So, I used to work at a metaphysical bookstore, and we used to have about 40 people come in per day. And most of them were into various fringe type subjects. But in the end, I would only ever think about hanging out with maybe just one out of those 40. And the reason that is because I guess you could call it fringe IQ, your level of awareness, things that are happening, right?
Great term.
It's a bell curve. And people that are watching this show and into the subjects like the ones that I cover on my site, we're, I guess you could say, at least in the 130 IQ range for the fringe, right? But the middle part of it reminds me of that the George Carlin quote. You know what I'm talking about? Think about how dumb the average person is, and then realize that half of them are even dumber than that.
Exactly. Right? It's absolutely true. Jeff, listen, Tom, Jeff knows I say this all the time. Well, I can't say it, so continue, Tom.
So, Tom, would we say that, think of the unenlightened person, and then half of the people are more unenlightened than they are?
Yeah, and so it's okay if you're just starting out. It's okay if you're new to this information. But after a certain period of time, that's when you start separating out the true truth seekers from the ones who are in it for ego identity, entertainment, pastime, just something to latch onto. And, you can say the same thing about like Christianity, right? There's people that are truly honestly into it for real reasons. And then there's others who are entirely in it for, the whole wolf in sheep's clothing kind of thing. So the same thing can be said about the UFO community. Everything that you just were talking about with the types of people that you encountered.
Excellent.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's just jump into the points. Tom's got some amazing stuff. And again, to be a shill, guys, please go to his site, Okay. He has his first book, or his, I would call Baby Seeker's book, which, by the way, it isn't a Baby Seeker's book. It's very advanced, which is called Fringe. I read it in like 2 days. It's not very difficult to get through. There's some amazing, amazing information in there. And then he's got all these other books beyond that, which, again, this guy's prolific. I mean, I'm prolific, but then I was looking at his stuff and I'm like, holy moly. So he has spent a lot of time, putting his information. He talks a lot about aliens and the disinformation about aliens and abductions. And there's just so much that this guy's involved in. So you guys, please support his work. I mean, it's definitely worthy. And like I said, I mean, like, I haven't really come across a lot of people with his depth of knowledge. So, again, support his work. Okay, so the first point tonight is so the reality of us being in a simulation, okay? And the kind of, ant farm, DNA farm aspect that we're kind of in. Tom, talk about that.
Okay, yeah, so is this reality a simulation or is it a simulacrum? And there's a difference between the two. See, a simulation is something that simulates something real and stands in for it. But the question is this reality, does it even have a realness somewhere else? Or is this entire thing fake?
Right. I've never heard that in all of my years in this esoteric realm. And that is absolutely profound. A simulation or a simulacrum. Wow. Please keep going.
So a simulacrum, as defined by... remember in The Matrix, there's this book that was on Neo's shelf. It was Simulacra and Simulacrum, I think.
Yep.
And that book by James Baudrillard, I think I'm botching that name, is French. He talked in there about how a simulacrum is a copy without an original. Copy without an original. So what that means is that this reality, even if you think it's a simulation, that doesn't mean it's a simulation of something higher or something that used to exist or something like that. It means that this entire thing is taken as real, but it actually isn't. So now, if you dive into quantum physics and what all these researchers have said about this reality being a simulation, I'm talking here about PhD level program people who are still awakening enough to, get into that subject. They talk about how you don't need any physics at all to create reality. All you ultimately need is consciousness. You need consciousness interacting with itself.
Right.
Okay. So when consciousness interacts with itself, it's basically just about the thoughts that you have and shared agreements about what consensual rules we all abide by, right? It's like you have your nightly dreams, I have my nightly dreams, Jay, you have yours. Yep. If we were to coordinate our dreams, we wouldn't be able to tell that it's something other than an actual shared reality. No. So in my opinion, I think that this reality that we're in is on the same continuum as a dream. It's just a more sluggish or stubborn manifestation of that. Okay?
Well, Tom, all reality is at least two or more people agreeing that it's reality. Then you have reality by definition. Right. So your thoughts, I think, are very right on.
Right. So if you were to look at your nightly dreams, for example, you're in it and it's being generated by you, but it's not being generated by the character you that's walking around the dream. It's being generated by your subconscious, which is part of your being, right? It's part of you, but functionally it's slightly different from you. And the same thing can be said for this physical reality that we're in right now, in that we are here and consciousness is ultimately creating all of this. But the thing that's sustaining this reality is what the ancients called the demiurge.
Yes.
And then it goes by many other names. You can call it whatever you want, but the ancients called it the demiurge. And what it was like the subconscious of the universe itself. Right. It's the dreamer of this dream. And we are projections of infinite consciousness that are here in this dream. But this dream it's not 100% ours. It's mostly generated by this demiurge. And we are only generating our own corner of it. Okay. So this new age idea that you 100% create your own reality, that's true in an absolute sense, in that if you are consciousness and everything is consciousness and we're all creating this, okay, you're creating all of it. But functionally, when you're here, the degree to which you control your reality varies from person to person, depending on their level of consciousness, their subconscious beliefs, whether you believe that you're disempowered or whether you believe you have creation abilities. Okay. So it varies from person to person, depending on at what level they're at.
Wow. So life is but a dream, but it's but a dream within a dream. And it's not even your dream. So it's not even really what it seems.
Yes, yeah. I mean, if you were to drill down using electron microscopes and particle accelerators, I mean, you would find atoms, subatomic particles, quarks, everything like that. But at the root of it all, of course, is consciousness, energy, and vibration.
Right.
I mean, even quantum physics says that everything is vibration. Now,
Right.
I went to college for physics and electrical engineering, so that's my background. And so when I read a lot of these articles in the news about reality being fake, or quantum physics proving that reality isn't what we're taught it is, I can understand a lot of the math behind it. I look into the studies behind it and everything. And they're right on, but they're only dealing with the so-called rules or the fiction
Exactly.
of
The
this dream.
three-dimensional rules of science. Yeah.
Yeah. It's all fiction within a dream. I mean, I've had lucid dreams where I realized I'm dreaming and I'm like, hey, wait a minute, I can go through this wall, and I push on the wall and it doesn't let me through. Why? Because some part of my subconscious has bought into the fiction that it's a solid wall.
Right.
And of course, the same thing
Did
happens.
your dream change when you started consciously observing it, like particles do?
Actually, in that particular dream, no, it was extremely vivid. But I've had other ones where, yes, I've had other dreams where I was able to take control of it. And in order for me to do that, though, I realized I had to kind of relax and sink into a connection with my subconscious. So then, in turn, that would then change the dream. See, and
Wow.
sort of the same thing happens here in waking reality, where people who try to do reality creation and manifestation, a lot of them use different techniques like affirmations, whatever, but all of it is geared towards penetrating through that barrier between the conscious mind and the subconscious. You have to get down into the subconscious in order to almost get like a root access to the operating system of reality.
Yeah, that's really well said. And just to add to that point, like, and I always go to David Hawkins, right? Because David Hawkins is very, very good on telling people or explaining it in lay terms for people that don't have your background or understand quantum, the realms of the quantum, that this is a conscious or a lucid dream. And even in that, when you understand that, like, like, for example, to make it simple, if you sit on a chair, are you actually sitting on a piece of material, an actual matter, or is it resistance to the vibration of the disintegrating frequency that we exist in the dream, right? So it's like when you really start looking at things like you were talking about with, through particle physics and the quantum, nothing is real. Like, we're imagining all of this, and it's just literally like a hypersonic experience in a lucid dream.
Yeah.
Tom, in your opinion, is anything real?
Yeah, the only thing that's real is consciousness, and more specifically, our inner spirit. That's the only thing that's outside this matrix. That's the only thing that is the fundamental thing. So in quantum physics, right, they talk about how things are in a sort of a nebulous probability state until you observe it.
Right.
Right. What's observing it, it's consciousness.
Right.
But quantum physics doesn't go beyond that point. It doesn't ask, okay, well, what part of consciousness? Is it the ego? Is it the subconscious? And the answer is that your conscious mind right now in 3D physicality, it's a very sharp focal point. When you're in beta state brainwave awareness, it's a very sharp focal point. And that's what equally selects a very sharp focal point within this nebulous probability. But our subconscious, being more of a broadened hyperdimensional thing, that's what's tied into the actual quantum wave function itself. So that's what can control the probability of things, right? So when you do, when you try to have empowering beliefs and shift your frequency to a higher state, what you're doing is you're altering the actual quantum wave function of the universe, and you're shifting probabilities, and that therefore amplifies, whether you attract more positive stuff or more negative stuff, depending on what you resonate with most. But your conscious mind is a part that actually selects the actual experience and goes through it. But there's a whole other part of our being that it contours the landscape of probability, I guess you could say.
Fascinating.
Tom, you could actually say, and I wish I was smart enough to say this, but I learned this from someone else, but you could actually say, to echo everything you just said, which is fascinating, and I agree, you're right, I'm right up your alley, is that there's only two things, and there's energy and frequency. There's nothing else. Everything else is an imagined form of whatever we create, consciously or unconsciously in this lucid dream.
Yeah. Yeah. So the question is then, if this reality is an illusion, what's the nature of the rules by which this fictional dream that we're in operates?
Please talk about that.
Yeah. See, and that's important because we are here, right? I mean, we need to eat, we need to have these bodies and maintain them. So obviously
we gotta pay our bills, bro.
So obviously, even though we are portions of infinite intelligence, we are here within this fiction. And it was just like in chess, you got to pick up a piece and move it. And if another piece knocks it out, then you're out of the game. So same thing with our bodies, right? I mean, that operates by these dream rules. So, from what I can tell, this reality is I would call it a 6-dimensional hologram, and I'll explain what that means.
Six-dimensional hologram.
Six-dimensional hologram. So a hologram, the holographic universe theory, it has to do with energy and vibration. And vibration, of course, is how a wave goes up and down. But a vibration has amplitude, it has phase, which is the alignment of it, and it has a wavelength with it, which is related to frequency. So a hologram encodes information as we know it in the form of different types of waves and how they interact and creates patterns from it. And then when you shine a laser into a hologram, in this case, the laser being our own consciousness, we pick out from this cloud of waves and stuff like that an actual physical, or what we think is a physical experience. Now, this hologram that I'm talking about, it operates by 6 dimensions, and that's 3 dimensions of space and 3 dimensions of time. But we only experience 4 of those. We experience X, Y, Z, and we experience linear time. But when you are out of body and when you shift into, let's say, like a spirit state, the afterlife, things like that.
So, or projecting astrally, same thing, right?
Yeah. Or when you go hyperdimensional, when you cross the speed of light barrier and you cross into the hyperdimensional realm. In hyperspace, it's the other way around, where you've got 3 dimensions of space or 3 dimensions of time and 1 dimension of space. And what that actually is, it's like, I don't know if you ever read Carlos Castaneda, but he talked about...
Oh, yes.
Okay, all right. So he talked about shifting into the second attention and about shifting your assemblage point, and about how we're basically just cocoons of light, like woven fibers of light that make up who we are and make up our experience. And how when you shift your focal point of what energy fiber webs come towards you, you tap into different types of reality. But what he's explaining there, he's actually explaining hyperspace and what it looks like when you're outside this physical illusion. That's what happens when you're looking through 1 dimension of space, which means going through one of those fibers, like going through one of those time tunnels, and 3 dimensions of time, which is where you select between different timelines and different realities. Okay, so 3 dimensions of time is like a web of energy. You could imagine it like that, and 1 dimension of space is going through that web through different realities and different branching points. And once you're actually in one of those realities, now we are where we are, which is 3 dimensions of space and 1 dimension of time. And that's kind of like technical. I mean, you don't have to remember all that, but the important point being that it's your consciousness and its vibrational spectrum consisting of multiple different frequencies that illuminates different parts of this 6-dimensional hologram. Okay. So if you got a higher frequency, you're going to illuminate certain paths in a hologram that would not be accessible to you if you were vibrating at a lower vibration.
So what determines whether a person, and obviously it's an opinion question, what determines whether a person has a higher vibration? And before you answer, and Jeff and I joke about this all the time, but like I've learned in my studies and walking the path that the higher the vibration of the person, which essentially is also the higher the light, which again, in quantum physics is the rate of spin, then that person is going to literally be repelling people of a lower vibration, again, just because of the physics state. So what allows, in your opinion, I know it's an opinion question, but what do you think makes one higher vibration naturally than a lower vibration?
Yeah, so the highest vibration thing within us is our own spirit. The only problem is most people are disconnected from it based on all the filters that they have accumulated in life, all the limiting beliefs, everything that all the illusory values that they've taken for real and are now chasing after. It's become part of their being. The more you saturate yourself with a certain type of value system, the more you attract experiences that correspond to that. Okay.
Yep.
And it's just like a taste in food, right? I mean, if you eat a lot of healthy food and you start appreciating it, you get a taste for it. Right. But if you're eating nothing but greasy junk food, you get a taste for that. So
hold on, let me stop you right there, because I want people to understand, because we're talking at a very high level here. So this is very simple, Jeff, and this is going to really apply, I think. And by the way, this is absolutely a next level podcast for everyone.
No doubt about it.
In the chat room right now, this is a blessing. Thank you guys obviously for watching us, but thank you for allowing Tom to do what he's doing. But everything that Tom just said, let's turn it around and make it really simplistic. If you drink alcohol and you eat shitty food like sugar and all this other stuff, you just go right into the realm that Tom was just mentioning.
And Tom, a lot of people in the chat room will be asking this, and it's talked about on your website. How about ayahuasca and mushrooms and other substances that people use to quote unquote access higher realms and higher vibrations and frequencies and more reality, quote unquote?
Yeah. Yeah. So as far as drugs go like that, the metaphor that comes to mind is back in the old days when you had those cathode ray televisions, those big ass televisions. Yeah,
of course.
Right? If you turn a picture on, if you hold up a magnet to it, it starts scrambling the picture.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So, and if you take the TV and you drop it on the floor, if it survives, it might switch to a weird channel that you didn't get before. It might scramble. You might tap into things. So when you're putting these drugs into you're literally scrambling the interconnection system between your biology and this hologram.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And that means you tap into things that you normally couldn't see, but you also start tapping into things that aren't even there. So you're getting a scramble. You're getting a scrambled view of a higher reality, a scrambled view. So what that means is that your own what's happening within you internally, your own subconscious projections get mixed in with actual signals from hyperspace, from other realms. And so then the question is, do you have the discernment to distinguish between the two? Or are you so blown away by it that you take it all almost like at a surface level and then become like a zealot for that kind of viewpoint, which is propagating a distortion, Now, I mean, just generally speaking, as far as like whether you should do it or not, I would say it's like a laxative, in that if you can't go spiritually, if you just can't do it and you're stuck, maybe do it and do it a couple times. I mean, if you really need it, then do it a couple times, but don't get hooked on it. Don't get dependent, because it leads to problems with never being able to go on your own, I guess you could say.
That's a good way to say it. As someone who's a human optimizer and a guinea pig and has done tons of self-experimentation for scientific benefit and for personal experimentation, I've done a lot of drugs in my life. I don't do hard drugs, but I've done, pretty much every psychedelic known to man. I have not done ayahuasca. I've done DMT, MEO 3 times. I've been very transparent about my experiences. It was very cathartic for me. I have a lot of friends who are in the ethnogenic world, who work in it, who are administering shamans, and then also people that want to get there. Everything Tom just said is accurate. If you take a drug for abuse and you get hooked on it, just remember the old adage, everything that goes up must come down. Okay. And the truth about using drugs to penetrate, higher realms, it's a loser's experience. Ultimately, I think Timothy Leary said it best, that, tune on, or was it tune in, trip out, or whatever the stuff that, all those guys faded and lost a lot of their intellect and their consciousness and a lot of stuff. And I know there's some guys that probably didn't and stuff like that, but I mean, everything should be done in moderation.
Yeah. It depends on where you are too. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
I've never done it, but if I were going to do it, I would basically prepare myself, at all levels for a couple of months, probably.
Exactly.
To shift myself in the highest vibration possible in order to tap into the highest.
Be fasting, not eating meat. There's a lot of things that you should do to prepare your vessel, but I think you got a good point, and I don't want to steal your thunder, but too many people are seeking the high. And then they actually foundationally have a love for the high. And I know people like that. They're always asking me, let's go to Ecuador, bro. You know what I mean? And it's like, no, man. I've been down that path. I've achieved that frequency. I kind of attempt to stay in that frequency now based on my life. But you can do, as Tom is going to very much explain through the rest of this podcast, you can get to that frequency by the way you live, not by choosing to use, mood altering drugs or plants.
Right. Tom, I have to say this because if I close my eyes and I listen to you talk, it sounds like Keanu Reeves on coke, because he actually has a personality. So
that's funny. That's funny. Yeah, it's funny because I did a video on synchronicity. It's on my YouTube channel. It's really awesome. You guys should watch it if you haven't already. It's a YouTube.
What's your YouTube channel?
It's youtube.com/Tom Montalk. Just one word, Tom Montalk. And someone commented I sounded like Keanu Reeves.
All of you guys, if you guys haven't figured this out yet, you should be getting more of Tom.
Absolutely.
So, read his books, go to his website, download his stuff. I mean, this guy is like different level than most of the people we brought on the show. But continue, in the thread that you were talking about, Tom.
Okay, yeah. So going back to this hologram that we're in, and how our own consciousness has a resonant frequency spectrum that lights up different parts of it, and that's how we attract experiences. So Jay and Jeff, you and I, just like DNA, we have about 99.9% of our DNA in common. And that's why we're all human, at least on camera, right? Just kidding. I'm not a reptilian, I swear. Yeah. So the point being that just as we have our DNA in common, we also have most of our vibrations in common too, and that's why we are all locked into this this reality that we call 3D Earth.
Right.
And it's just that 1% difference between us that determines that it determines the different types of themes that we experience in life. Like Jay, you told me how you've been on this amazing journey for the past 7 years, and I've had my own journey, and others have had theirs. And some, it was more of a downward journey too. And it's all based on what they resonate with, what they need, the kind of choices they've made. It's all a big feedback loop system, that generates experience. But the point that I want to get at is because our vibrations are so locked into this reality, that's the reason why within this fiction, we have certain limitations and certain risks that we have agreed to and expose ourselves to. And part of it involves the fact that according to the laws of physics and the conservation of energy and momentum and all that, there's such a thing as scarcity here. Therefore, there's competition in this world. Therefore, there's unfortunately survival. And
Right.
that's sort of the name of the game amongst animals, plants, it's all law of the jungle. And here we are sparks of the divine injected into this fiction that's for the most part the law of the jungle. So we're suspended between the highest and the lowest in this weird middle point, fluctuating up and down based on our choices in our vibrational spectrum. And that means that we can resonate more with the law of the jungle and survival, or we can raise our consciousness and resonate more with the laws of the divine, which includes positive synchronicity and miracles and, being able to shape probability in a positive way and everything like that. Okay. But it's because humanity has been, for the most part, trapped in a low vibrational state for, all of recorded history.
This recorded history.
This recorded history, our recorded history. Yeah, because I'm sure there's vaults somewhere and aliens know everything that's been going on. But it's because we're in this vibrational state that therefore we've had to deal with competition and survival, and that's why there's been agriculture, farming, hunting, everything like that, so then we can take these animals and plants and feed ourselves, right? Well, on the etheric and the astral level, there are beings who underwent that same dilemma of scarcity because in their realm, because they are vibrating at a low vibration, they can't tap into that infinite energy from the spirit. So because of that, they started resorting to other beings to feed upon, and those beings, unfortunately, are us.
Right.
So that's why they're...
Okay, so I just wanted to transition you, but continue where you're at, but that's where we're transitioning right now, so negative agendas, but continue.
And Trina asked a great question, Tom. We don't want to get too far downstream. Can we master both the law of the jungle, so to speak, and the higher realm, or can we become so good at the higher realm that we are also able to be successful in the law of the jungle?
Yeah, well, the funny thing about that is if you look at, all these books and research on past life stuff, afterlife, everything like that, these beings who exist in these higher realms, they consider this realm, Earth, as it's almost like climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, and that it's difficult. If you want to test your soul, if you want to test the strength of your spirit, you come to a place like this and get exposed. You dive into hell in order to learn how much of an angel you are. In other words,
interesting.
I think that's actually true. I mean, I think Hollywood has been showing that to us in more ways than one for 30, 40 years.
So is it possible, Tom, that if we master, or let me rephrase that, when we master this realm, that other realms we go to should be easier for us?
I would say easier in that we overcome the limits of this current realm. Unfortunately, we also take on new challenges too.
Yeah.
Right. Or fortunately, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's fortunately too, because it's a greater degree of freedom. It's like roller skating versus, flying in a wingsuit. It's a new degree of freedom because now you've got 3 dimensions, you're going faster, everything like that. But it's also a little more challenging. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Tom, do you think
and if you mess it up, the payback is a little stronger too.
Do you think that some of us come back though, Tom? Do you think that some of us who, are vibrating, and I'm not speaking of us 3, but I'm speaking of like masters, ascended masters, ascended beings, saints, people like that, David Hawker calls them, or David Hawkins calls them spiritual avatars. Do you think that they choose to come back to kind of help us as a species of mostly, like you said, lower vibration to awaken? You think that that's what's happening?
Yeah. So regarding that kind of touches a little bit on whether or not reincarnation is a free will choice or not. And what I would say to that is, the more free will you have, the more of a free will choice it is.
That's what I would say.
So
very well put.
Right? So if you're a younger soul, if you're just a younger soul and you need just basic experiences, maybe it's kind of like welfare in that you're kind of given what they can give you, versus if you're a specialist, a professional, now you kind of go where you ultimately are needed, so it's a little more specialized than that. So Jay, regarding
so hold on though, let me just stay keeper there, because this is so mind-blowing to me. I'm not trying to interrupt you, but you're just blowing my mind. Do you think then that us, to be where we're at, us three and a lot of the people in the group, that we're ancient, that meaning our souls are very evolved because of time in the system?
Yeah, I would say it's a level of sophistication and age. It's like wine gets better with age. It's that sort of thing. And yeah, I would say that, at least in my case, if learning experiences in life come more easily to you than they do to the average person, maybe it's because you've already learned it in a previous life, and so now
you're done that.
Yeah, it's
and just so you know, Tom, this is without a doubt the highest level, most sophisticated chat room on YouTube, without any exception.
No doubt about it. But back to that then. So do you feel then that to get to this level, we've done the work, so to speak, in past lives? So it would be then, again, I'm in three-dimensional thought process right now, and I know that there's nothing linear about outside of the three-dimensional realm, but in a linear life or linear thought process of right now, do you accept the idea that when we come back, let's say all three of us, for just hypothetical sake, we have been doing the work in our past lives so often that we woke up sooner, meaning, we kind of figured out what was happening in this life earlier than, say, people that don't wake up? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say that where we are right now is the end state of a very long process spanning multiple lives. Okay, so we are right now, we are the sum totality of all the choices that we have ever made since our conception as God sparks in this illusion, right?
Yep.
So some people, some people, they're not interested in this thing that we're in right now. I mean, they're not interested in this level. They have pretty basic needs, and that's fine for them, because one day they're all going to be where we are. I mean, okay, that sounds kind of arrogant, but I didn't mean it that way. But
no, it's not though. It's not.
What I meant to say. Yeah, I was going to say, like, we're all going to be on the same page eventually.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right?
We're all walking the same path. It's just some of us are way farther behind than others.
Is it possible that, and this is, I hate to be the wet blanket on the show, but if you keep coming back and you fail to try to aspire and grow, do you think you eventually will just disintegrate and go back to fertilize the astral realm, so to speak?
I think for that to happen, yes, it's possible. But for that to happen, you'd basically, there would come a point in your evolution or de-evolution where you make a conscious choice for darkness.
Right.
Ooh, I like that.
You make a conscious choice for darkness, and you walk that path of, I mean, it's kind of debatable whether it's a path of evolution. In the end, I think your core consciousness will survive, but it's going to be a very, very long and difficult path for you to ever get back to the state of balance, right? But you'd have to choose the path of darkness, and you'd have to become a master at it. So I mean, you're basically talking about master, demon, overlord level before you get to the point where it's like in physics where so much mass accumulates that if you're not a believer in the electric universe theory and you believe in black holes, it's that point where mass just collapses in upon itself and becomes a black hole. So there's a spiritual mass, and not in a good way. I'm talking about like low vibration mass that accumulates to the point where a soul, I think, can implode and sort of be beyond the point of no return. And I think at that point they would become dormant and basically just sit it out on the sidelines until the next huge universal cycle.
We actually talked about
Interesting.
We actually talked about that in the group. So Tom and Martin and Nick all wrote their answers in on that. It's perfect. All right. So next segue point, which is perfect because you were just talking about demonic dark masters. So let's talk about the negative agendas. Now, obviously, this group, this chat group, this show, obviously me and you, we've had this conversation. We've been talking a lot lately. Jeff and I even went on a podcast with Robert and we talked about the idea of clones or NPCs or empty souled humans or whatever the hell they are, like bots, biobots, you know, maybe false AI humans or something like that. Talk a little bit about that and then kind of separate them in your mind.
Okay, yeah. So on my website, this is a subject that I've been researching since, you know, the late 90s. And the way I got into it is because my mom, she's from Singapore. I was born from Germany. My dad's German. And when I was 6 or 7, my mom remarried to an American soldier. And this guy, looking back on it, sociopath traits of, sociopath traits. Except for I didn't know what that term was, when I was a teen. So it wasn't until I did research later that I sort of discovered the whole subject of sociopaths and psychopaths and what they call it, antisocial personality disorder at the time. So I researched that, and it started matching up with all this other research I was doing on the matrix and the astral body, etheric phenomena, and energy vampirism. And I realized that they were closely connected.
Fascinating.
And so what came to me was the idea that not everyone is necessarily piloted by a spirit, because spirit is the source of compassion, empathy, true creativity, inspiration, and curiosity too. So if you're lacking spirit, you're not going to have those traits. And you're definitely not going to have empathy. I mean, that's the actual definition of a psychopath. It's someone who doesn't have a conscience or empathy.
Almost like the Antifa crowd that is essentially from, a long way away looking at it. You just described exactly what they are. They're almost like engineered, like with this progressive, insidious mind virus.
Yeah, the question is it a mind virus, or is it an actual feature of the human brain that doesn't have a higher thing in it to act as a checks and balance? So I'm leaning personally towards the latter, in that the human being, as we exist right now, we're a composite of our biological programming, our societal programming, some external negative influences, but mainly it's the ego and the higher ego or the spirit that are sort of in a counterbalance within ourselves. And we kind of choose which one we resonate more with. The problem is what happens when a person doesn't have a spirit component. Then all it is ego, biological programming, and social programming.
Right.
And that is what an NPC or non-playable character actually is. Now, on my website, I have an article called Spiritless Humans. That's my term for them, spiritless humans. But NPCs.
That's the best way, I think, to phrase them, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm sure everyone knows what NPC means, but in case they don't, it refers to characters in video games that are background characters. They're not played. They're just non-playable characters. They just help fill and kind of perpetuate the
Let me throw something at you about that.
Hold on. Dolores Cannon called those backfill people.
Mm-hmm.
That's what her term was for.
Yeah, so that's the thing. It's like, you and me, we're not the only ones talking about this, and the people into the NPC. I mean, the whole NPC meme, that's just the latest iteration of something that actually goes back to ancient times that the Gnostics knew about.
Absolutely.
Right?
Tom, how about a non-primary character, a placeholder for things or spirits or entities to walk in and out of and use at times they want to use them? So they're a non-primary character.
Yeah. Well, so that brings up a good point, which is that non-playable character isn't exactly the most accurate term, because all of us ultimately are organic. Well, we're biological portals for things outside this illusion for the most part. It's just that for people who have spirit, we have spirit as the primary player of this character, right? If there isn't a primary player, you're right, other things can jump into it. And this is kind of a nuanced point, but you'll notice with a lot of these non-playable characters, these empty people, that your own subconscious can actually manipulate what they do easily, like very easily.
Right.
So
that's a great point.
So if you're someone who has a lot of subconscious shadow issues, like let's say a persecution complex or a victimhood complex, that energy field is going to illuminate a part of the hologram. This hologram that we're in that involves these empty characters fulfilling that need of that learning lesson. So basically, you just get smashed down, you get victimized until you learn how to rise up and stand up for yourself.
Do you think it's possible that these non-primary characters, as I'm calling them, are sometimes used to, I don't know if attack is the right word. Maybe it's more along the line of develop or help facilitate the growth of people that do have a spirit.
Yeah, and on one of my articles, I actually use the weird term. I called them karmic prostitutes. Karmic prostitutes.
Nice.
And the reason that is because you pay with your energy to get something in return.
Absolutely.
Okay? So they're hired in a way in order to provide you with.
What a fascinating! It's not necessarily people that are trying to attack you hiring them, or people that are trying to help you hire them. You may hire them yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I've been through that, Tom, and it hasn't been that long ago.
Yeah, it happens. But here's the thing, though. When you attract one of these victimizers into your life, because you have that energy and you need that experience, not only are they animated by your energy, but they're also being animated by parasites who kind of piggyback on that process and try to amplify it.
Dude, I have lived that out, and you're right on.
Yeah, so that's the thing about this game, in that it's another good metaphor would be a casino. You go in there to play, have fun, to hopefully make some money. But ultimately, the house is there to win, right? It's there to make money. Yep. So you're getting something out of it, but ultimately they're profiting. And so that gets into the question about whether this reality that we're in, is it just a farm? Is it just a prison? Or is it also a kind of a school and a gym and a playground for the soul? And what I would say it's... I mean,
Bill Hicks said it's a game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's all those things together, but it's not all those things at the same time, because it varies depending on who you are, what you need, what you resonate with, right? I mean, there's some people right now who are in the dark underbelly of human trafficking, right? So they're in one level of this illusion.
Oh.
And then there's other people who are like right now just doing amazing divine, work, right? So it's all these different channels, all these different frequencies going on at the same time. And it's up to you which channel you're on. It's like a radio station, which frequency you're dialed into.
Is it really up to us? Is it really that simple? We can just choose where we want to be and what frequency we want to be resonating at?
Absolutely.
Yep.
What do you think, Tom?
I would say in the end, I would say yes. The catch is when I talked about how we all have 99.9% of our DNA in common, we have most of our frequencies in common. That's why we're within this reality. And those frequencies, we can only change a few percent of that given the energy that we have right now.
Gotcha.
I'm talking about soul energy, etheric energy, right? So a lot of these Oriental Eastern meditation practices, a lot of them involve manipulating your energy body, right? Trying to raise your chakras, activate them,
right?
Just pump up your etheric energy system. And the reason they do that is because the etheric body acts as an interface between your spirit and your body. So it's like it's the intermediate layer that kind of helps one manipulate the other. So the stronger that energy field is, the more your spirit or the more your consciousness has control over not only your body but also your environment. Right. It's kind of like the intensity of the hologram laser that you're shining. I guess that's how you could state it. So if you don't have enough of that energy, then you can only change part of your frequency spectrum and therefore only change part of your experience. As far as it goes. So yeah, you do have choice, but ultimately you'd have to yourself up in an etheric and / astral way in order to give more weight to your choices as far as.
And of course, if you're physically optimized, you've got more energy and more vitality and more options at your disposal.
Yeah.
And to add to that, and this is really, really big, and we talk about this all the time. And by the way, Tom's done an amazing job writing about this. If you do not love yourself and trust yourself, you are like a gigantic magnet to the dark energies that
absolutely
dark frequencies. So if you do not love yourself and trust yourself, that shows in all of your behaviors and actions. You cannot manifest / channel or elevate that vibrational frequency that is going to allow you to not avoid, or but to avoid the dark energies and, these whatever subatomic and astral entities that are here feeding off of your energy.
Yeah. And after 40 years or almost 40 years, I really have come to the conclusion that whoever the central figure of the Christian mythos was, or that message, was right. There's really only two rules. Number one is love. Well, it's couched as love your neighbor as yourself, but that really means there's two rules. Learn to love yourself, learn to love your neighbor. And that's pretty much it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because anything other than that would be buying into the fiction of separation, right? It's buying into the illusion.
Absolutely.
And actually one of the occult rules that I've noticed myself is that the more you buy into illusory things and illusory values, the more you lose your divine protection, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And then the reason that is the more corrective experiences you need to attract in order to get back on track. Okay.
Yep.
So you start attracting more pain and more suffering to wake you up, because obviously you're not doing it willingly.
It's kind of crass, but the more shit you have, the less juice you have.
Right. The more you're enwrapped or entwined into what my teacher says are disintegrating frequencies.
They are.
Which is really matter realm life, right? Things, nice houses, nice cars, nice clothes. When you're wrapped in the illusion, right? Because everything is an illusion except energy and frequency, then what you just said is exactly right. And it's hard. I hate using that word hard, but it is hard for people to, living in this matrix, living in this illusion, to understand that, because it's like, but I'm working so hard to make more money, to have more stuff, to give my girlfriend or my wife or my kids a better life. It's a balance.
Maybe you need a better girlfriend.
But you know what I mean? It's a balance. And that's where people lose their perspective, because all of this, being enwrapped to it or addicted to it or engaged with it and not being unattached from it, that's the losing game.
This is so hilarious, because once you see it, it's really, really super simple. But trying to get to the place where you see it, it's like, what are these three guys talking about?
But Jeff, it's true. If you think about how hard all three of us work, we produce a lot of content. By the way, Tom's an amazing magician too. If you guys have not heard him, he's a musician. He plays
musician. I think you said magician. Musician.
No, I probably belched in my throat. I'm sorry by accident, but no, he's an amazing musician. So if you guys have not heard him, but again,
is it on your website, Tom? Your music?
Yeah, it's on my YouTube channel. Same YouTube channel.
So we create content, right? We're creators. We're conscious co-creators. So realistically, it's just when you're a creator, if you're creating a lot and you create often, it's very difficult to have the dark energies interfere with your life. And I think a lot of people who don't create, I always say, like, most people go through life as observers and not participants. You have to participate to engage the higher frequencies, right? The higher vibration, to raise your vibration. So many people just sit back and even if they're not an NPC, that's what they end up being, Tom.
Well, the old adage is the idle mind is the devil's workshop. There may be more truth in that than we've realized.
Yeah. So, I mean, and then the next question is, of course, what does it mean to raise your vibrations, right? Yeah, what does it mean to do that? And to me personally, just for me, in my opinion, it means two things. It means how you feel and what you truly believe deep down at the core of your being. And if you can elevate those two things, elevate how you feel and elevate the truth level of what you believe. Like, for example, you mentioned people who strive for material success, and a lot of times they sacrifice their own integrity to do it, right?
Yeah, most of the time.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's because they believe it's a dog eat dog world. So right. they've already bought into and resonated with the fiction of the law of the jungle. That's the level that they're operating at. And so they kind of defeated themselves before they even started, because at that point, if you're not tapping into your co-creative abilities to shape this hologram, this reality, then you have only your own willpower to rely upon in order to get ahead. Okay.
Ooh.
See, and willpower is a good thing. See, the purpose of willpower is to overcome resistance, but that resistance should only be as much as there needs to be, and not beyond that due to all the crap that you've bought into unnecessarily. So, right. See, a lot of people, they press on the brakes on purpose, and then hit the gas pedal thinking that that's how you go fast, when ultimately you just have to get rid of that resistance, and then your soul naturally kind of.
So just build some momentum, and then that should be enough to carry you forward like the snowball down the hill if you're not putting your own brakes on.
Yeah. And I guess I should add to that point one important thing, which is something that I realized, which is the following. When you do manifestation or reality creation, a lot of it involves building up a momentum of your beliefs, your thoughts, your feelings, and your vibes, and to a high level, and keeping that going. And the more you build that momentum, the more amazing things get.
Absolutely.
The more improbable the miracles become.
Absolutely. The supernatural becomes natural.
Right. But here's the thing: only when you have that high level of momentum can you let go of the steering wheel and kind of just
right.
flow with it. Okay.
Well said.
Right. Some people are extremely held down by limiting beliefs and thoughts of victimization and fear and things like that. And they read this thing about, just letting go, just let go and trust God, that kind of thing.
Right.
But they're letting go, but their car's like headed off the cliff.
Exactly.
So you got to be steering in the right direction before you can let go and let yourself coast. And the way you do that is by building up positive momentum first before you kind of let things go. And until you get to that point, you do have to use some discernment and willpower to stay on track and go up those steep hills. Unfortunately,
Tom, you've used the statement a couple of times, limiting beliefs. What if I said to you that for the true seeker, all beliefs are limiting?
Well, that is the higher perspective, right? I mean, that is the ultimate perspective. In the end, all beliefs are limiting. But as far as being here within the illusion on a strictly functional level, yeah, there are like some programs that are more limiting than others.
Yeah. So because I've got a guy that I didn't want to be BFFs with, and he's beating me up daily on his YouTube channel, and his thing is, Darty doesn't believe in anything. That's his problem. That's actually Darty's best asset, is he doesn't believe in anything. I don't have anything to defend. I don't have anything to prove. My give a damn busted a long time ago. And a believer looks with objective. A believer is looking to prove what he believes, but a researcher is looking for what's real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the only thing that's more important than belief is like your essence, like who you actually are.
Exactly.
Because see, limiting beliefs, you can state them as words, right? Like I'm not good enough, I don't deserve love, that sort of thing.
Right.
But those are statements that come with feelings. But beneath that, there's an even deeper level, which is what you actually non-verbally resonate with in life.
Right, exactly.
And that's the level that you ultimately have to pivot at. See, if you can pivot at that level, then you pivot your life. You pivot what angle your laser beam is pointing into the hologram, and that changes your theme of experience.
Jeff, I just want to say right now, I have profound love for all three of you guys. This is absolutely amazing. I cannot believe that I'm looking into the chat room with the group and seeing idiots fighting in the chat room right now.
Oh, well, that's the way it goes.
No, it's not, man. You should be paying attention to what's going on in this group. This is not me being arrogant. This is a profound podcast right now. And the fact that you're in that group starting fights is a joke.
It is a joke.
Man. Seriously, wake up. I just saw a horrifying message in there, and I'm like, what are these people doing? Like, this is profound. Why can't you just listen? It's just, it's all
Tom,
right.
if you could say, let's say you only have one sentence to say to the people that are listening to this chat room tonight, and you could try to be as most profound as you possibly could, what would that one sentence be that you'd like for people to take away from this and be thinking about it when they're filling up their coffee cup at work in the morning?
I think that ultimately the best thing that I could say would be this. Make yourself more capable of being of service to the divine.
Ooh.
At all levels.
That's how I live my life. All right, well, we're not done, Jeff. We're going.
No, I just wanted to put that out there.
No, that was epic. All right, so look, so this is, now we're going to get, so for all the people that are not paying attention, and I'm not apologizing if you took personal offense to what I just said, you should, because this is important stuff. And we're talking about things that will allow you to do the work, and that's where we're kind of going. But before we go into that, and time wars and timeline manipulation, which we know is happening, can you kind of create a hierarchy right now of who the powers that be are, from a good versus evil? And again, we're in duality. We know that good can become evil and vice versa. But in your mind, the way you've done this, because you've done an amazing job in hierarchying the various characters, talk a little bit about the good versus evil and how you catalog it right now.
Okay, so just generally speaking, real quick, earlier I mentioned about how in the etheric and the astral realms, there are beings there who, because of their low vibration, they don't have access to the divine energy. Therefore, they have to harvest that energy from others, and we are it.
Right.
So there's an actual etheric and astral energy economy that we are unwittingly part of. It's like that's the whole thing behind the Earth being sort of an energy farm. But like I said, of course, that's not all the Earth is. It's just one aspect of it. All right. So that's what it's ultimately about, I think. I think it's about harvesting soul energy, and in the case of the more malevolent beings, like demonic entities, I think they're actually in it not only to feed, but also to spread their energy, their vibration as a kind of virus in order to destroy what they think is possible as destroying the actual spirit. See, they hate innocence. They hate anything that's, based in truth and positivity and anything like that. So it sickens them, and they have a very malevolent bloodlust for anything like that. That's why a lot of these elite pedophiles and stuff, they go after little kids, because babies, because that's one of the most innocent things around.
Yes.
Right.
So that's just like a holographic fractal reflection of what's going on in the demonic realms on a larger, grander scale.
Great point.
So Tom, do you think people of high vibration, because this has always been an interesting point, and you and I have gone back and forth with this, but do you think people of a high vibration are still potentially subject to the feeding of these etheric, entities when they, fall into ego or fall into, fear or greed or whatever? If I'm looking at the Hawkins consciousness scale, you fall below, say, 250. Someone in your family starts to fight with you, right? I mean, because I've always thought about this. And, let's say you reside, which most of us do, at 500 level and higher, but you get pulled in, right? And then do you think that when that happens, they're just literally ever present in the other realms, and they can just land right on your shoulder and just take a bite out of you and just generate you to go further and do stupid stuff? Like I think of road rage, for example. You can be a perfectly normal guy, 550, 600 consciousness level, you ride down the road, somebody just pulls right in front of you and tries to kill you.
I've seen it. I've known others who've experienced the same thing, where it's like in the Matrix, where the agents jump into people to populate the Matrix.
Yes.
Something like that happens. But I mean, of course, it's a little more complicated than that, because, like, for example, Dr. William Baldwin, not the actor, the Dr. William Baldwin, he had this book called CEVI, Close Encounters of the Sixth Kind, and it's all about basically non-physical, alien, and dark. He called them dark force entities, and by that he meant like demons, basically. He talks about the actual energy economy that they have set up, the energy farm, and how people a lot of times will have etheric or astral cords plugging into their energy bodies, into their chakras, and siphoning energy out continuously, or even more so when these people are engaged in, extremely dramatic, suffering, anguish, sexual deprivation, that kind of stuff. And so they feed off that, and they store it in collection tanks in other realms, and then ship it off to whatever, who knows who the actual ultimate overlords are. But there is an actual energy vampirism going on Earth on a very mass scale by originally, I would say, demonic type entities, but it also bleeds over into the alien realm. And the reason why I say alien is because, as we know, there are human beings, and you've probably encountered them yourselves, who are energy vampires.
Oh, yeah.
Right? There's certain people, you're around them, and you just get extremely drained and tired, even though it's not like they're trying to antagonize you. It's just being in the presence can make you tired. And then you got ones that go even further and actually do try to antagonize you to try to get an emotional reaction and, suck your darker vibrational energies. So if humans can have that happening, then why not aliens? Why not aliens taking it to a higher level where they actually turn it into an industry of, right? And the thing about aliens, so the difference between aliens and demons, for those who are wondering, demons by definition are non-physical. Okay, they're mainly astral with some of an etheric energy body component. Mm-hmm. Whereas aliens are more like us in that they have physical bodies too that can die. So they actually incarnate into bodies, and they can die and drop the bodies. Whereas demons, they don't really have bodies that can die necessarily. They're just energy forms. They're just constructs in the astral realm. So where I'm going with this is that because aliens are partly physical, they have technology. So they have the ability to genetically engineer an entire race, which is us. Okay. So that's the difference between aliens and demons. And that demons are more like opportunistic feeders, and they just kind of swoop in and try to manipulate us into giving off our life force energy. Whereas aliens, on the other hand, can actually design genetic vehicles to house higher souls in order to feed off them to create this actual energy economy. So the aliens, I think, they're the ones who created our meat suits, these bodies that we're wearing. And they're the ones who set up, through technology, this energy farm infrastructure. And they're the ones who also created technology to, hold our vibrations in place into this timeline that we are on.
So do you think then that the demonic astral entities are in some capacity, the order givers to some of these aliens?
Yeah, I think so. Although I think, if you do this whole hierarchy from the very top to the very bottom, you've got the infinite creator at the very top, or whatever you want to call it. Yep. And then at the very bottom, you've got, a cross between the physical universe itself, which is matter, because matter is consciousness that's ultimately asleep. It's like extreme matter and consciousness. That's what matter is.
Right.
So between those two scales, between infinite consciousness and ultimate deepest black hole matter, you've got this whole hierarchy of different things, and we're somewhere in the middle. And above us, we've got, I guess you could call them, benevolent aliens, benevolent etheric and astral entities. Below it, you've got malevolent astral entities and malevolent aliens. And then go even deeper than that, and now you've got, what the Christians would call angels at the top, and then demons at the bottom. So the whole like angel demon thing, that's sort of on the highest level of what's going on. It's darkness and light. That's what the ultimate level is. But here within this illusion, within this dream, we've got people, we've got more good people, we've got worse people, we've got more benevolent aliens, more negative aliens, and the whole like deep state and everything that's part of that, the whole black ops stuff. That's all within the illusion. So aliens are actually within this matrix illusion of what I mentioned, the whole 6-dimensional hologram, 3 dimensions of space, 3 dimensions of time. They're within that, but they are, for the most part, masters of its rules. So they're able to bend time, they're able to abduct people and program them and genetically engineer entire civilizations and races and such. So I think they are a bigger threat to humanity than demons. Because demons, okay, they're bad and they destroy the spirit, but they're more opportunistic and they don't have the level of organization that the aliens do. But getting back to getting back to your question though, if you look at the behavior of what's been ascribed to reptilian aliens, for example, and if you compare that behavior to demons, it's almost a 1-for-1 match.
It is.
Right? So what that tells me, it tells me two things. Well, we also have evidence of reptilians having physical form too, like actual trace fluids and things like that, right? Yep. Whereas that hasn't really been the case with demons necessarily. Like they don't leave behind a demon tail that dropped off, right, and someone's got it in a jar. I mean, right? It doesn't happen.
Not that I've seen.
Right, but what I would say is that I think reptilians, the majority of them, are most likely bioengineered hosts for demonic energies, for demonic consciousnesses to inhabit.
Which makes sense, right? Because we know from the past in the ancient texts, we all these chimeric creatures and chimeric entities and chimeric physical manifestations or incarnations. So that would make sense that would be like their ultimate, still maintain the dragon aspect, demonic, evil, bigger wings, all the things that would make a human being fear.
Yeah. Yeah,
interesting.
Exactly.
And I can't help but sit here and think that there is absolutely no coincidence that the 3 largest human religions that make up a very powerful fear and guilt control matrix are all based on blood sacrifice, sacrificial atonement, blood.
Yeah, I mean, the Old Testament, if you look at where the whole people of Israel came from and how they came to even survive, most of it was due to the Ark of the Covenant and this energy field that it would emit, okay? And the Ark of the Covenant was actually a piece of alien technology. It was a piece of alien technology. Yeah, so on my site, I've got this series called the Gnosis series. And the first article is entirely about the demiurge and how that all works. But then I get into things like the Holy Grail, the Philosopher's Stone, and the Ark of the Covenant. And I explain how all 3 of those are examples of what I call demiurgic technology.
Right.
And what that is, it's advanced alien technology that manipulates also etheric and astral energies. Okay. So for example, the Ark of the Covenant, not only was it, some sort of a crystalline, highly etherically charged supercomputer that could tap into the actual demiurge consciousness itself that perpetuates this physical illusion that we're in.
Right.
And so through it, they're able to rearrange matter and, smite their enemies and all that kind of stuff. But the point being that what they were involved in, and actually, Jay, you mentioned The Stellar Man, John Baines' book, The Stellar Man. Yeah. If you read The Stellar Man, within the first 50 pages, John Baines gets into
it's all there.
Yeah, he gets into who Yahweh actually was. And this is based on actual secret society inner knowledge.
Absolutely.
He talks about how Yahweh was one of the, I forgot the exact term, but basically just one of the higher demonic infernal intelligences out there.
Well, even the Bible says they came from somewhere else and created this. So by definition, they are, as you've said, alien.
Mm-hmm. Right. The false light construct. That's what this is, as the Gnostics called it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think what it ultimately was, I think it was like a healthy operating system. I think this matrix was originally designed as a learning simulation, like a learning, like they hacked it, they corrupted it. It's like an operating system that got infected with malware. So so now both exist at the same time, and depending on what part of the operating system you're within, you're either closer to the operating system, depending on where
And
you are.
by the way, Tom, Jeff, I'll send this to Robert immediately tonight because we text a lot now, but this is exactly what Robert says. Remember how many times he told us that Enki, Ptah, whatever you want to call him, Yahweh, what did you used to call him?
I still call him the rat bastard.
The rat bastard. I'm sorry.
And I have to tell you, by the way, I've never heard anyone say rat bastard but me. And on one of the episodes of the TV show Lucifer, guess what Lucifer calls his father? The rat bastard. Somebody's listening to these shows, Jake.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, or just the idea that the demiurge is just a learning computer, a supercomputer. But back to what you were just saying, he says the same thing, Tom. He says that something, whether it's archons, and we're going to get to archons, but something nanites, Gerald Clark calls them nanites, something came into the OS, and as you said, some form of massive biological malware, and it corrupted everything. Some people call it the black goo, this, dark AI, whatever it is, but that seemingly is what is going on. So if you think about it, if we are in the realm of duality and there is good and evil, and now the good and evil is infected with this parasitic mind virus, it's even more nuts, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And, Agent Smith kind of alluded to that when, Neo was sitting, or when Morpheus was sitting there handcuffed to that chair. The first Matrix was meant to be nice and it worked and it functioned, but humans didn't accept it. So we had to make it harder and deeper and darker. So maybe they were alluding to this somewhat.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so, right. So it wasn't, I don't think it was entirely that, everything here was innocent and we were just totally violated and invaded. I think it was a deal that was made. I think there was some level of agreement or attraction.
Sure.
That, because it goes back to what we talked about earlier, how we attract lessons into our lives, right? Which sometimes bring on pain and suffering, and that there are these entities that kind of hitch a ride on that process to amplify it and extract even more energy than we would be giving out normally.
Somebody's asking in the chat room, do you believe there are any benevolent aliens?
Yeah, I think we should. We should kind of get into aliens quick because it's an important subject, right?
Okay, please do jump in.
Because aliens, they're not like, it's not like Bigfoot where one day there's going to be a Bigfoot takeover.
Wait a minute, are you telling me Bigfoot is not an alien?
If you are asking a serious question, I believe Bigfoot is actually another one of those genetic creations of aliens. Some of them are hybrids and some of them are not. So some of them have more alien-like dimensional powers than others. Depends.
Because some Bigfoot hunters have now seen him like coming out of a green haze, and they're speculating that he's interdimensional. But you would,
they are.
Oh, so you think that he is?
Yeah.
Powerful. Okay, great. Sorry to get us off the track.
No, it's okay. But David, it's a good question because that's a follow-up question. David Paulides believes that they're definitely interdimensional. But back to what you were just saying about alien, just so everybody can define this big picture. We're all aliens.
Yep.
Right? I mean, realistically, if panspermia has somewhat defined this physical realm's existence, then we're bits and pieces of primordial soup from everywhere. So, I mean, everyone is some form of a hybrid form of alien.
Oh yeah. I mean, we're aliens ultimately, and we're hybrids too. But functionally, right? It's just a question of what ratio of hybridization are we? How much are we original simians? And how much are we these whatever these entities are from other planets and stuff, from other realms? Yeah, but so regarding positive aliens, right? Let's talk about who the main players are. And I've done a lot of research on this. I'm not talking about the latest fad about blue avians or cat aliens or things like that. I'm talking about the classic ones that are reported by thousands of people. Greys, everyone knows the Greys. Reptilians, we talked about them. You've got mantis beings, look like insects,
right?
Who seem to be pretty much near the top,
right? The higher order,
yeah. And then you've got the ones that look, for the most part, like humans. They call them Nordics, they call them Palladians, whatever you want to call them. And of those four, Nordics, reptilians, mantis, and greys, our closest allies would be the positive Nordic types,
right?
Now, and I only say Nordic because that's a conventional, term for them, but it doesn't mean they're all like blonde hair, blue eyed. I mean, they got brown hair.
So would Maria Orsic be positive or negative? Because she obviously helped the Nazis, but a lot of the stories say that she wasn't actually negative, but she was tricked or duped by the Nazis. Is that even possible, or do you think it's just an illusion?
No, I think. I mean, it's kind of like, let's say we're villagers in Africa right now, and then someone comes over from America who's part of an aid organization, right? Look, let's say it's Maria Orsich, right?
Yeah.
Question is she good or is she bad based on her being an American in this particular example?
Exactly.
It's in her case, I think it would depend on the person and depending on what political faction she's part of. Okay. So I guarantee you this. The Nordics, the ones who look like us, they're not all positive, but they're not all negative.
Right.
100% agree.
They're not all
just like humans. It's just the same thing. It's Occam's razor. It's the same thing.
I heard one figure from a contactee who has a lot of inside information about them, that one of them actually told him that they were about 30% positive and 70% negative. And by
even the Nordics.
Even the Nordics. Yeah.
Excellent information.
Yeah. And they're all part of a common civilization. So it's not like, different Nordics from different parts of the universe we're talking about.
So where are they from, Tom? I mean, are they the Inner Earth Agarthans or the Vril? I mean, what do you think? Just opinion.
Well, yeah. So the moniker of Nordic or Palladian, I think that's a composite term for people of different origins. The problem is, if they have time travel abilities, you can't really say where they are from, right?
Exactly.
You can't say, okay, right? Yeah, because you could say that, okay, well, maybe they are survivors of Atlantis who went underground and they've been underground for the past 10, 12,000 years. But if they had time travel, then they might as well be from the future who had gone back to Atlantean times and then jumped back and forth. So they could be time travelers, they could be Atlanteans, they could be, if they have that level of technology, they could be from other planets. Yeah. And some people will say, okay, well, if we're all in a simulation, then what are you talking about? Like other planets, like outer space isn't real. That whole idea about outer space not being real, flat Earth and all that kind of stuff. Well, if the simulation can have Europe in one place, America in another place, Africa in one place, it can have the moon out there, it can have other solar systems. It's not a big deal for the simulation to simulate space.
Right.
Would you say these aliens are within the 6 dimensions that we talked about at the beginning?
Oh yeah. See, that's the thing that defines aliens.
Okay, gotcha. You're right. I get it.
Yeah, because they have vehicles, they have bodies, they have bases. So those are all dream character, dream environment type.
Gotcha.
You're talking about from an absolute level. It's just that they're very good at manipulating the dream. Okay, that's their specialty. That's what makes them alien as opposed to just dumb animals in the forest or humans like ourselves.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So if there were to be an alien disclosure event coming up, most likely it would be some sort of a Nordic group that would make first contact. And the reason that is because that's the most psychologically advantageous and that we look like them, they look like us. And humans have been programmed through media and I suspect also genetically going back thousands of years to respond to that image with, googly eyes, right?
Right.
So it acts as a psychological disarming mechanism for.
Yeah, here comes Mr. Spock. We all know how smart and
or
wonderful he is.
Jesus-like being with long hair and a beard and white.
Yeah, or they could send their supermodel ones, and all the guys would be going crazy over them and stop thinking. Right? I mean, that's another way to disarm.
And there's probably a huge pheromone part to it, I would imagine as well. Pheromone.
Yep.
Yeah,
Did I say that right? Yeah.
Yeah, you said it right. And calcic and pheromones. Yep.
Yeah, or just whatever psychic broadcasts they're sending out.
Clamoring, as we say.
Yeah, because aliens, they are extremely psychic, like extremely telepathic, and that's another difference between them and demons and things like ghosts and such. Is
so
that
Tom, what group, in your opinion, obviously, and this is so awesome, by the way, but your opinion, like what group of aliens are running the deep state / because mostly I would say now the deep state, even though we know that it was the globalists, the NWO, it seems now it's just most of the government is centralized as the hub in the United States somewhere.
Yeah.
I talk about Denver, Jeff and I were just there. Denver is a dark place. Whatever's going on in Denver is not good. But who do you think it is? Like, just your opinion.
Yeah, my opinion is that it's the collective of Mantis, negative reptilians, negative Nordics, and their gray stooges. Grays, they're just bioengineered bots,
Yeah, exactly.
They're just pawns,
And by the way, David Jacobs has the exact same hierarchy.
Oh, does he? Okay.
Tom, one time I was 20 years a Pentecostal minister, and one time I was casting out this demon and was having to work really hard at it. And I noticed off in the corner to my right was this great big huge praying mantis being just taking notes, not involved or anything, just taking notes. How does that ring to you?
So the mantis beings, they're not, I think they only look mantis because that's how our subconscious, or that's how
they project that image into our head.
Yeah, exactly. So that's like the archetypal representation of their energy: something cold, something calculating, something predatory. And from all the research that I've done on the mantis beings, I think they're the ones who are most involved in timeline engineering and manipulation of the actual hologram, the actual reality. Like manipulating consciousness, programming people. They're like the expert engineering masterminds of this whole control system.
Mm-hmm. And comparatively, they're rarely seen.
Right, because they are the ones who are pulling strings, right? You don't really see the CEO too often versus, the front desk receptionist.
Perfect.
Kind of like that.
Jeff, we're going to have to bring Tom on again because
absolutely.
I know we got about 10 minutes left and we'll shut it down because I don't want to go 90 minutes. It's just not fair to you or Tom or any of the people in the thing. We got 3 more bullet points. So I want to hit them all, but I just want to go like high level. I want you to talk about the timeline wars just real quick. Like how are they manipulating the timelines?
Okay, you're right. So we know right now, for example, that with synchronicity, your own subconscious can, in a way, manipulate the timeline.
Yeah.
Mm.
If you manifest something in your life, or if you have a synchronicity, if you trace back the cause and effect sequence about where that must have originally began to get to your point where you start encountering it, it often is earlier than when you made the choice to manifest it in the first place.
Right.
And quantum physics has proven the same thing, that the past can be altered in small ways, depending on what you observe in a quantum experiment.
Right.
But that stuff, that's kind of like kiddie level versus what they've done with technology to actually edit the matrix code of this reality in order to change the past, to shift timelines and things like that. Now, the thing about that, though, is if you change the past, we as humans, we're only going to remember the most recent iteration, right, of a certain time loop. Like every time we redo the past, we're only going to remember the most recent one, unless like a glitch happens, and then you get things like the Mandela effect,
exactly,
deja vus, things like that.
The classic line, "Whoa."
Yeah, like seeing that cat twice in the Matrix, right? It was a sign that they changed something. So
yep.
The Wachowskis, whatever they're tied into, they knew what they were doing.
They did know what they were doing.
Remember, the Wachowskis aren't dudes anymore, though.
No.
You know that, right? They changed into women. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
What's the next bullet point so we hit them all?
Well, just keep going on that. I mean, the other 2, I'll just hit him so he can talk. He kind of already talked about the power of consciousness.
Yeah. So let me just talk real quick about the time war. Just finish that up.
Please
right?
do.
Please.
So we're talking here about technologies like HARP, like CERN, like 5G. All right. What HARP and 5G have in common is that they use things called phased arrays. And what that is, it's a grid of antennas where the output of each antenna can be carefully timed and digitally controlled. And so you can sum all of their individual waves in whatever way you want. You can steer the beam, you can make them rotate, you can do all kinds of fancy things with it. One thing you can do with it, though, is you can actually cancel electromagnetic waves. You can cancel them. And when you take electromagnetic energy and you cancel it, the energy doesn't go away. It just transforms into something else. And that's what scalar waves are. That's what longitudinal waves are.
Boom.
And these are the things that affect the hologram at the actual energy vibrational level. Okay. So what they're doing with HARP, what they're doing with 5G, I think the black ops part of that, I think, is manipulating the hologram at that actual quantum vibrational level using these scalar / longitudinal waves. Right. And what that can do is that can not only alter time, but it can also alter probability. So when they fire these things up and go really high level, what you'll notice is you'll get effects that are similar to when there's a Mercury retrograde or when there's some sort of a bad astrological alignment.
Oh, yeah.
And so what it ultimately is, I think you could call it weaponized astrology. Weaponized astrology.
No doubt. Wow.
Because what they're doing is they're generating they're generating vibrations that would otherwise naturally happen through various planetary and stellar alignments.
So they're manifesting K2.
Yeah. So when they fire it up, you'll notice that more bad things happen to good people. And that's part of their frequency war. That's part of their timeline war, which is to steer the future by amplifying the probability that the positive future does not manifest, which ripples backwards in the form of bad things happening to good people more than
who are the good guys fighting the bad guys right now, Tom? Like if you could just like identify them, like who are the beings that are a part of the white hats?
Yeah, well, it's a mix of divine beings. Yeah. Like I said, Christians will call them angels, but it's divine beings. Only thing about divine beings is they're extremely powerful, but they're so wise and so responsible with that power that they barely ever intervene in anything unless they absolutely have to. you know, whether it's, this person or that person, but not that person,
Tom, does any real divine being need to be worshipped?
No, not worshipped, but I guess I would say respected out of love more so than respected out of fear. See, worship is respect out of fear a lot of the times. And it's also giving over your power to something else.
Yeah, that's Yahweh's statement. Thou shalt not have any other gods before me. Right.
Yeah. You don't need to worship it, but you need to be mindful of it and align yourself with it. All they're asking of us is to align with the divinity within us. That's all they're asking for us. And that's all they really care about.
So do you think, because again, you're majorly studied in this, do you think that the classic benevolent aliens like the Arcturians and the Pleiadians, and I could name others, do you believe that they are part of this galactic, interstellar white hat group, or is it more just like an order of angels? And I can give other names. I can talk about the order of Melchizedek, and I can talk about Metatron, his order.
Okay,
all these different people that have been pushed out there, both by really good researchers, but then also the new age whack jobs that Jeff and I encountered in Contact in the Desert.
Yeah. So real quick on that, at the top level, you have divine beings. And in my opinion, the infinite creator is so powerful, and it's more like the watchmaker thing where he just kind of winds the watch and lets it go. Right. And the infinite creator doesn't need to do everything itself because it has other beings to do it for it. And by those beings doing those things, they evolve in turn. So by delegating tasks, those other beings get to evolve. So that's why I think most of the positive stuff that's happening is being done by divine beings. But beneath them, there's also positive aliens. I mentioned the positive Nordic type groups. They exist. They're also part of that. And there might be other beings that I'm not too aware of that are part of this positive federation. And then beneath that, there would be positive secret societies. And then beneath that would be people like us, who are sort of out in the cold trying to research things and put the pieces together. But all that is part of a divine plan to counter a lot of this negative distortion that's happening. The problem is what you mentioned with this order of Melchizedek and all these other weird names, Arcturians and so on. Most likely they don't exist by that name. Right. And most likely a lot of that channeling is actually false.
Absolutely.
Actually being done by Greys, reptilians, demons, and even like Black Ops stuff.
Well, listen, as I told you, JJ Hertok, who was at the conference, my teacher proved to me what I was reading. I read, as I told you guys, I got 400 pages into the book, and there was a lot of what I assumed at the time was profound. But there's always a way to determine it when everything is about patriarchy and God is a man, and there's no mention of the divine feminine aspect of things. You instantly, that's my cipher now when I know things are being told. But just the last 2 points, and we'll let you go in 2 or 3 minutes, and we'll definitely have you back on soon. Mm-hmm. The last point is spiritual liberation and transcendence. Jeff and I always end these shows with positive messages and, letting people know, what can you do right now in the here and now? Because tomorrow doesn't matter. And yesterday is already forgotten. So what can people do right now from a spiritual liberation and transcendence standpoint, walking the higher path in your opinion? I know you already gave it a sentence, but just summarize.
Yeah. So right now people are asleep. They're in a trance. They're spellbound by the material world and the law of the jungle. And what that is, it's a bottom-up influence. It's the world influencing the body, which influences the mind, which corrupts the soul into being cut off from the spirit. So it's this bottom-up, terrible thing. So we need to reverse that. And that starts with spirit, which, as I said, was the only thing within us that's actually real and outside this matrix. So it starts with spirit. And what we can do is we can align with the spirit and everything that it represents. So that means aligning with the feelings of gratitude, optimism, personal sovereignty, spiritual sovereignty, devotion, and compassion. Those are the vibrations that if you were to focus on those every day, before you step out of bed, just align yourself with those things, get that energy going within you, that will go a long way towards changing your frequencies and to aligning yourself with the more, with the higher, more positive aspects of the hologram. Okay. That's one thing. That's elevating your feelings. Elevating your thoughts would be to saturate your mind with higher sources. That means reading all the best books. It means listening to all the motivational, positive, true, empowering people, right? The more you expose yourself to that, the more it filters into your mind, into your subconscious, and down into your soul. And because you're kind of resonating yourself with their vibes, and they're already kind of plugged into something high. So that helps too. And elevating your thoughts, that basically means not only read these sources, but deeply contemplate them and tap into your own intuition in order to start generating insights. Because whenever you generate an insights, you're tapping into the highest part of you and receiving the knowledge that's what gnosis actually is.
Right.
That's what gnosis is. So yeah, elevating your feelings, elevating your thoughts, and saturating yourself with the highest vibrational sources and people out there. I mean, that's pretty much everything you can do. And when you do that, spirit then gains control over the soul, soul over the mind, mind over the body, and then body over the world. And that's how you can become more capable of service to the divine.
Tom, this has been such a profound podcast. I'll just ask you one last question, just because I know you have such great knowing. Where are we right now? And do you see, because Jeff is Mr. Positive, and I'm kind of like, I know the golden age will eventually get here, but I feel like we have to go through one massive down, whatever that may or may not be, to get to that point. Where are you on that line before we let you go?
Okay, so my thoughts on that is we're all swimming down the same river, okay, of time, but we're at different levels of depth within that river. Some of us are sparkling near the surface, and some of us are kind of like dragging along near the bottom where the mud and the rocks are, and that's based on our vibration. So what I'm saying is we're all on this timeline together right now. And so when something happens to the collective, some mass calamity, some mass disaster that they attract due to their karmic vulnerabilities, their mass lessons, whatever they need to awaken, because you're part of this world and because you're living in an area where they might be, you're going to experience some of that, okay?
Yeah.
Now the thing about your higher vibrations is when you elevate them, you attract maybe the best of all available options to you right now. You might attract the best of all available options. But what if those options are between bad, worse, and worst? In other words, when things start getting dicey because that's what other people need and you're caught in that, maintaining your higher mindset, maintaining your spiritual balance is going to give you the edge on making it through that. However, that doesn't mean, like the New Agers say, that you're not going to experience any of it. It's not going to be part of your reality. It's going to be happening to other people and not to you. So I think because we are physical, because we have vulnerabilities, I think we got to be mindful to not only empower ourselves spiritually, but also physically, because we are both spiritual and physical beings. And I think we need to up ourselves on both fronts in order to cover all bases. So I do think that things are going to get darker before they get brighter. And if humanity goes through a dark age, so be it. And if they do, then we're going to need good people to make it through, to dominate, and to rebuild afterwards according to a higher blueprint. Because if they're not going to do it, then I think this illusion is going to be fully taken over by the malware infection.
Very well said. But you think that we're still kind of in the balance. We still collectively have the ability to manifest a golden age with just a slight, downward into some darkness, versus the possibility also exists that we can literally just subvert everything and the archons can take over.
Yeah, I think there's no way that you can go from the world as it is right now with its false values, its corruption, its darkness, to a golden age just in a very linear trajectory. Like, okay, like someone invents this and that, and there's a new political movement, there's a new religion, and everything's like hunky-dory, right? It's not going to work like that. You have to tear down the old before you can rebuild it with the new. And it's that tearing down process, the collapse. That's what we're entering into that right now.
Yeah, from entropy comes creation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the actual definition of disintegrating frequencies manifesting on a collective scale. It's disintegrating itself too. So, I think we should just let that house of cards collapse, stay out of the way, and try to rebuild something good afterwards.
I love it. That sounds great. Tom, thanks so much for being with us. His website is Montalk. That's MONTALK.net. One of the most deep and profound sites that I've seen in a while. His YouTube channel is Tom Montalk is the name of the channel. Just go to YouTube, search Tom Montalk. Jay Campbell's at TOTrevolution.com, Decoders of Truth. You know where to find all my heresy. Tom, one of the most profound podcasts that we've done in quite a while. We do certainly hope to have you back again real soon.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it.
And you are absolutely amazing. I just want to say, guys, if this moved you as much as it moved me and Jeff tonight, please share this on your social media later and tomorrow and forever. More people need to watch these type of podcasts to expand human consciousness, which is why we're all here. So we appreciate you guys for being such an amazing group, and we love you. Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. For Jay Campbell and Tom Montalk, I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, the Christian Whistleblower, saluting you for being here, seeking after truth, and thanking you for being with us and encouraging you to and reminding you we're the last generation of real humans. Let's get busy.